it wasn't just throw the ball, 50 times a game. They came into the league where you also ran the football, and they were putting up these astronomical numbers. And then when the league shifted and started calling more incidental contact, they started protecting the quarterbacks more. And you saw the completion percentage of quarterbacks go from, when I first got in the league, if you were a high 50 completion percent guy, Skip, you were a very good player. If you complete under 60% of your balls now, you're trash. That's what they label you as.
Yep.
And so now we've seen guys go from high 50s, mid 60s, upper 60s. We see Drew Brees and some of these other quarterbacks completing 70%. I think Drew Brees just completed 72% of his passes this year, which he has 3 of the 4 highest completion percent seasons in NFL. Skip, it's just hard. And also what I see, because Randy transitioned to TV, it's kind of softened his image. We look at Randy now, like, you know what? Randy, all right.
You're right.
Randy's all right.
Yep.
T.O. didn't get an opportunity to go into TV for whatever reason.
Well, he's got a lot of opportunities right here on.
No, I'm just saying, Randy's on, every Sunday. He's talking about football. He's breaking down games. It softened his image.
Well, it doesn't soften Terrell's because he sits here arguing with me. Right?
He's been arguing with a lot of people, Skip, and he has some very valid points that he should be. It's hard for me to believe that the guy that has the 3rd most touchdowns, the 2nd most receiving yards, isn't in the Hall of Fame. What other sport? It's hard for me to believe that the guy that how do you tell the 98-year history without having Terrell Owens in it? Mm-hmm. You can't. And talking to some people that were in the room that's been voting for years, some of them have been voting for upwards of 20 years, said it was the most contentious they had ever seen it.
Yep.
And it came down to some people felt it was like this plain hatred. It's like they were going out of their way to find a reason to keep this young man out of the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't try to find reasons to keep someone out. That's not what it's about. What did he do on the field? What he did on the field is second to none. Like I said, I can make the case that he's the 2nd greatest receiver of all time. But stop trying to put them against each other. Well, if you put T.O. in, you can't put Randy in this year. If you put Randy in, T.O. needs to wait. Well, Michael waited and Chris Carter wait. I don't want to hear all that. These guys deserve to be in. The T.O. should have been a first ballot. Randy should be a first ballot. And for T.O. to have to wait this long is unacceptable. But T.O., since he's been off the field, I don't think anybody's changed their perception of T.O. Whatever you thought of him when he played, you still feel that exact same way now. I just think the perception of Randy has changed because he's on there now.
Okay. So my bottom line to this discussion is I believe that Terrell Owens, unbelievably, now has a little better chance of getting in this Saturday than even Randy Moss does. Because
I think he's generated sympathy.
Yes. And I probably have helped his cause a little bit, but I stand by what I've said from the start. This is even before he was retired. He wouldn't be in my Hall of Fame, and I'll get back into it, and I don't want to beat the quote-unquote dead horse and, pile on. But still, the point about Terrell is I think he's been very shrewd in conducting his campaign for why he belongs. And it has created sympathy for him. And it has shamed probably subconsciously enough of those voters to think, gee, did I get too personal? Has it become our vendetta? Which I don't see that, but because Terrell has talked about it so much, I think there's been a groundswell on social media in support of him, led in large part by you and other Hall of Famers. And I don't know any Hall of Famer, I haven't seen anybody quoted who doesn't think that he doesn't belong, right? Everybody does.
Well, there's a few because they have 2 guys, and last year, and it's probably the same this year, you had Dan Fouts and you had James Lofton, 2 current members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame that's actually inside the room with the writers, and they're making their cases why this player should or why this player shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame.
But are they anti? I can't remember.
Dan Fouts was.
Dan Fouts was. Okay, got it. So Randy Moss, it's going to put the voters in a precarious position because they're going to look hypocritical if they first ballot Randy Moss.
Yes.
Now, for me, I told you yesterday, the last couple of days, Randy Moss is the first ballot just because he revolutionized the game. And I'm going to take him over Terrell Owens just as a pure wide receiver because starting with that first year in Minnesota, It just was eye-popping what he did.
17 receiving touchdowns as a rookie.
It's just outrageous what he did, and a lot of what he did off the field was equally outrageous.
Right.
But he ran 4.240 versus Terrell's 4.5-ish, and he had great hands to Terrell's sometimes shaky hands. And as a deep threat, I never saw anything since Bob Hayes like this guy.
Right.
And for they go way back to, do you remember Bob Hayes?
I do. I don't remember him, but he revolutionized the game because he made everybody get out of that man coverage. Because before Bob Hayes came in, everybody played man coverage.
Yeah, and Bob Hayes had Olympic speed.
Well, he won the Olympic gold medalist. What, 64?
Yeah. So he could flat fly.
Yes.
I mean, he might have been faster than these guys.
Yeah, he absolutely was.
So the point is, Randy Moss belongs in just on what he was on the football field. But if you start looking at the misbehavior and you've brought up several times the bad attitude, Terrell did not have a bad attitude once the ball was snapped. No. He played with rage. He played as hard. He was like Russell Westbrook of the NFL, just playing as hard as he can every snap, every game. I give you that. Randy Moss took plays off and admitted he took plays off.
Right.
If he wasn't into it, he went to Oakland, and for whatever reason, he just didn't like the circumstance. He didn't like Al, and he finally just said, I'm out.
Yep. And
he was out to New England, and then records happened, right?
Correct.
So the point is, if you're going to dock him 1 year, it would look correct, because if you're going to make Terrell wait 3 years, Randy Moss should probably, if you're going to stay the course, shouldn't he be docked 1 year? Now, you wouldn't dock either one of them.
I would have never docked.
And by the way, just for the record, you had to wait
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
Right. Skip, I think the problem that some of the voters have is that the argument that they're making for T.O. to not get into the Hall of Fame, they've seen other guys come and those questions were never brought up. No one ever brought up Brett Favre's pain-killing addiction. They didn't bring that up. They didn't bring the sent picture. They didn't bring that up. There have been other players that had off the field issues that were never brought up. It wasn't until T.O. came up that the bylines all of a sudden now has been changed.
Bylaws,
that says now what you do on the sidelines, the locker room, the meeting room can be held against you. So in all the years, the first year they had, Hall of Fame members going probably, 70 years ago, 80 years ago. You change it when this man comes up. This says now. So I just want to make sure I'm correct. I think it's almost 400 members now. T.O. was the only one that had behavioral issues.
They affected 3 football teams, and I feel like blue in the face over here bringing this up. I don't want to look like I'm piling on because we have butted heads on this for years.
So did Randy Moss affect the Raiders?
He did, but in different ways. He was a solo act. Terrell took on the whole team because in 3 cases, which is why I nicknamed him Team Obliterator, he took on the head coach of 3 teams that were really good, and he tore them apart, I believe. And I've spoken to many of these coaches and players because I covered the first team. I worked with a lot of the players on the second team, and I know a whole lot of the players on the Dallas team. So, again, Terrell's got some issues, some insecurity, psychological. We've talked about them, and for whatever reason, and I have sympathy for all that, as do you, but in San Francisco, he went after Steve Mariucci, and he went after Greg Knapp, his coordinator, and then worst of all, he just publicly tried to destroy Jeff Garcia's quarterback. And then he goes to Philly for his fresh new start with his soulmate and camp roommate, Donovan McNabb, and you know what happened? He went after Donovan, and they became mortal enemies to this day. They're still taking shots at each other. And then he went after an Andy Reid who tried to embrace Terrell. And then he went after Brad Childress, and they were knocked down, drag out, and they finally sent him home. Remember, they just sent him home and said, don't come back. And then he goes to Jerry Jones, who wanted him for box office, and Bill Parcells just wanted no part of Terrell Owens.
Did he deliver box office for the Cowboys?
Yeah, sure.
Did he deliver for the Eagles?
Sure.
Did he deliver for the 49ers? Yeah. Everywhere he's gone, he's delivered. And that's the thing, though, Skip. I mean, you look at Randy. The Minnesota Vikings traded him for a reason. They wanted him gone. The Oakland Raiders, a lot of those coaches that you asked the player, they said he quit on them.
Okay, I can't argue, which is why if these voters are not going to be hypocrites,
thank you.
If they want to stay the course of these new, whatever you want to call these guidelines or bylaws, or the way they imposed their collective will on Terrell Owens by saying you can't destroy football teams and get in our Hall of Fame in the first ballot or the second ballot. Well, then you've got to do it to Randy Moss. Fair is fair.
Yeah, but I mean, Skip, Bill Parcells destroyed it. Look what he did to the Patriots, Skip.
Okay. I don't disagree with that. I'm not the biggest Parcells fan.
Yeah.
But, boy, he and Terrell just went at it, and then Terrell went at it with Todd Haley. A lot of people go at it with Todd Haley. But then Terrell, I know for a fact because I heard from two eyewitnesses, Jason Witten got so upset. Jason Witten went up to Terrell before practice and said, let's go right here. And Terrell didn't want any part of it.
But Todd Haley got into it with Anquan in Arizona.
No, I got it. And then now with Ben.
Well, here's the thing. I think with T.O. and Coach Parcells made no secret that he didn't want T.O. And he went out of his way. You know,
he called him the player.
You're right.
He wouldn't even call his name.
And remember early on with Terry Glenn, rest his soul, he called him, she gonna be okay.
I know.
So that's the thing, Skip. Like when we like someone, we'll excuse whatever their behavior may be, whatever their antics or actions may be, we'll excuse that.
Yeah.
And no matter how great a person is, if we don't like them, we'll find the least thing. So okay, you see that right there?
Yeah.
And that's the way they're doing Terrell. But I do think Terrell should be in the Hall of Fame this year. I thought he should have been a first ballot. They need to stop this. Well, you know, they've only had 4 modern-day wide receivers. Stop. If the guy is worthy, and these guys are more than worthy, put them in.
From my heart, if he gets in on Saturday evening, I'll be happy for him.
I'm going to be the first one on stage to hug him.
All right.
And say congrats.
He's paid some price for this. It's taken a lot out of him. And this meant so much to him that part of my heart will say, way to go.
Yeah.
Finally. And I think it will do him a lot of good that he got recognized. You know,
one of the 3 or 4 best players to ever play in the NFL. The greatest defensive player to ever put on shoulder pads, helmets, and cleats is LT. Has there ever been a player that had any more issues while they were playing?
Way off the field, but Terrell's again filtered onto the field because they were in the locker room and in the huddle. And against his teammate, he was tearing internally the team apart. LT did not do that.
What about Brett Favre holding the Packers hostage year after year after year after year? Was that doing anything for the team?
All right, but he did pretty well, right, when he came back. So he'd show up a little late for training camp. Didn't they do pretty well after that?
Yeah, T.O.'s team did well. Philadelphia did well. You know, this is the first time going back since they got rid of T.O.
Guess what? Terrell didn't play in either of their home playoff games before they got to the
But
Patriots.
those 13 regular season games he played
was great.
15 tubs.
Yeah.
And he was off to another roaring start.
No.
You know, look, I know a little backdrop of the story between T.O. and Donovan, and that's
so do I. I know a big backdrop.
But
I know it all.
Skip, it's just hard for me. You know what, man? Jonathan Smith is 3rd in touchdowns, 2nd in receptions, and 8th in receiving. It was 2nd in receiving yards, 8th in receptions. Jonathan Smith going in the Hall of Fame on Saturday.
Well, once you're in, you're in. I just hope it doesn't turn into a more controversial situation, depending on who gets in or doesn't get in, and then it becomes about the voting situation as opposed to who's actually getting into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, one last point. You know, I despise this concept of first, second, third ballot.
Yeah.
It just seems like you're either a Hall of Famer or you're not a Hall of Famer, right? And your brother was fortunate enough, first ballot, because he deserved it. Go. Good.
Right.
Here we go.
So once you're in, you're in. It's just the lead up and the talking about it.
Right.
I mean, was Shannon Sharp a Hall of Famer? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's a Hall of Famer. So what are we doing? Why do you need to wait?
It's just the anxiety that it adds to the players as they wait to find out if they're getting in.
Does that discount your Hall of Fameness?
It don't discount for me. Now, Skip, I would have felt some kind of way had my grandmother passed and not to be able to hear that announcement or to know that I was going in. Yeah, I would have felt some kind of way. But because she was able to hear, even though she passed before I actually went into the Hall of Fame, she understood what was going on. I got an opportunity to tell her I made it to the Hall of Fame. But Skip, it's harder on the family members because, you know, what didn't you do? Or what could you have done? And as I said, the only thing I said afterwards, I said, if you didn't like me this year, you're not going to like me next year because I can't make any more catches. I can't make any. I can't win any more rings. So
maybe you could campaign better.
The cement is dry. Next up, Bill Belichick is looking to add to his legacy on Sunday. He's already won 7 Super Bowls, 5 as Patriots head coach and 2 as the Giants defensive coordinator. And Belichick has already won more playoff wins than any NFL coach ever with 28. Shannon, does Belichick get enough credit?
Skip, I watched 30 for 30 last night on ESPN.
So did I.
And I don't know if everybody saw it, but if you get an opportunity to watch it. I thought he was great. Now, I played on teams that really didn't have a problem going up against Coach Belichick coach teams, be it in Cleveland, be it the Jets, be it the New England Patriots. So we've had great success. The teams that I was playing on, we've had great success. But when you get the backdrop and you look at what he did in the playoffs with the Giants as a D coordinator, holding a San Francisco 49er team with Jerry Rice and all those Hall of Famers to 3 points, shutting out Washington, and doing what they did to the Broncos, and he did it year after year. And then he goes in 1990 against the Buffalo Bills, who led the league in scoring, and he basically said, we're going to let Thurman Thomas, if he runs for 1 million yards, well, that's okay.
Yep.
But we're not going to let Jim Kelly throw for 350.
Yep.
And we're going to punish those receivers. And when you look at him and you see it from that perspective, he says, okay, now it makes perfect sense. Now it makes perfect sense. Now we understand the fourth quarters why those teams can't score and allow Tom Brady to be Tom Brady and come from behind. Skip, I believe they go into a Saturday night meeting or a Saturday meeting, and Coach Belichick sits down and he says, Tom, this is what I would do. And this is where the weakness would be if they did that. That's something nobody else can do. He's the greatest. With knowing his backdrop as a defensive coordinator, he doesn't get nearly the credit that he deserves because he didn't have one of these historically great defenses. People still talk about the 85 Bears and the 46 defense led by Buddy Ryan. They talk about Marvin and the 2000 Ravens. They talk about the 02 Bucks. They talk about the 14 Seahawks or the 13 Seahawks. Skip, he doesn't have those. He did have LT, who's the greatest defensive player. But since in this Patriots run, he's only had 2 players to go to more than 2 Pro Bowls, Richard Seymour and Vince Wilfork.
Yep.
And see, I think the thing is what will get glossed over, if you don't have J.J. Watt, you don't have a Von Miller, you don't have one of these lockdown corners, your defense is not any good. But 10 times in 14 times in 17 seasons, he's had a top 10 scoring defense.
Yep.
With that being said, with his defensive prowess, him as a head coach leading this team, and I know his history, Skip. You know, Spygate's not going away. Never going to go away. That's on his resume. It's hard for me to say that he's not the greatest coach to ever live, and he deserves more credit than whatever credit you give him for the success of the Patriots, you're shortchanging him.
Okay, so in Washington 30 for 30, I learned a lot that I already knew but had lost sight of, where you get the totality of it, the achievements that he and Parcells had together with the Giants, on top of what he's done in New England. He's a wizard. He's a savant. But I'm also going to make the case that he's been pretty fortunate because he's had 2 of the greatest business partners you could ever have. Bill Parcells, who was a defensive mastermind to start with.
He was.
And Belichick said last night, early in the documentary, I learned everything I know from him to start with. He taught me everything when they went to the 3-4, you know, how to coach the outside linebackers, the stand-up rushers. Yeah, so that came from Parcells.
And he said his coaching is just like Parcells.
Right.
No nonsense.
Yep, no nonsense. And they remind me of each other because
do.
they're the same sort of guy. They got a little scoundrel in both of them, just a little bit, but they got edge to them.
Both of them, you like, let me see, my wallet here, okay, my wallet.
Wait. Yeah.
Everything good, okay.
The best part of the documentary was they did each other dirty a couple of times.
Yes.
And it got a little dicey. And I think they kind of like peacefully coexist now. I don't know if they love each other. Brian Cox said at the end, no, they don't love each other.
Yeah.
But they like each other.
Yes.
They respect each other. But then he inherited he picked, I should say, the greatest business partner you could ever have is Tom Brady to me. So back to Joy's question about credit. I think he's getting enough credit because I feel like he gets more credit than Tom Brady does for the Patriot dynasty. So that's my final takeaway. But then back to this. Let's break down. You mentioned it. He had the greatest and the baddest defensive player there ever was in Lawrence Taylor. So it helps to have that guy.
Yes.
And that 86 defense, it doesn't get 85 Bears acclaim.
Right.
Maybe because the 85 Bears were still roaring, basically, without Buddy Ryan the next year, obviously.
Right.
but still, it got a little overlooked because if you saw in the 30 for 30, they were walking on the field like Ray Lewis was. We got this, man, because we're just better.
They were loaded. They were loaded.
They were loaded, and they were extremely well coached. And a lot of that was he deserves more credit for some of those game plans. I thought Parcells did that.
But I thought the thing is, Skip, is that when you look at it, that they were a 3-4 team, and then in a playoff game, we're going to come out in a 4-man front. Okay, we're going to play all nickel.
That was stunning.
We're going to play dime.
Yeah, because that's shocking.
Yes, I mean, you might play that on third down, but to say we're going to base out of this and you do it from week to week, you must have very intelligent players, because most of the time you play what you play the entire season. If I'm a 3-4 team, I'm going to play 3-4, and then once we get into the nickel situation, we'll go down to a 4-man line. But Coach Belichick's like, nah, we're 3-4, but we might play a 4-man line for the entire game. Against Buffalo. 2 down linemen. LT said what Thurman Thomas was going to run for 9,000 yards. I don't care.
Didn't care. And Parcells also added the offensive component. We're going to shorten the game. We're going to control the clock. And we're going to keep Jim Kelly and company, the K-gun, off the field. And they did. And still,
took a missed field goal.
It took a missed field goal by Scott Norwood wide right. It took that to survive 20-19. So I give you that. And to hold them to 19, that was pretty sensational.
But think about what they did in the 90 championship, because I believe had the 49ers gotten there, they would have been the first team to three-peat in Super Bowl. And they went there and they beat them. 15-13. 15-13, because they were down 13-12. And Roger Craig gets the first down. It's all for naught. Not only did he not get the first down, he fumbled the ball. LT gets it, and they kick a walk-off field goal.
15-13.
15-13,
yeah. I got you. So I give you all that, but it was a joint venture with Parcells. So I'm with you. So then he becomes a head coach and goes to Cleveland, and it wasn't great.
No.
They had 4 losing seasons out of 5, made the playoffs once, and then he gets fired, and then he winds up, after all the hocus pocus that went on, he winds up in New England in the first year, 5-11, and he had a lot of Parcells guys that he inherited. So he had a core of Parcells guys.
Oh, you said no. When he got fired, he ended up going to New England as a defense coach.
But I'm saying I'm skipping all the steps.
Okay.
But when he finally becomes the head coach again in New England, he inherited a lot of Parcells picks. Teddy Bruschi and Ty Law and
you know what, Skip? If you think about it, once he found that Coach Belichick, that Mr. Kraft wanted to talk to him, I think the reason why he did what he did, he found out that Coach Parcells didn't give him the facts, didn't give him the information.
He did not.
And he's probably thinking, okay, what's to say that you said you're retired now and I'm the head coach? What's to say you don't come in the year and fire me so you become the head coach again?
But he had 3 more years left on his Jets contract, and he wanted out, and he wanted to go to New England. And
because he didn't trust, at that point, he didn't trust Coach Parcells. That's what that was mainly about. He didn't trust Coach Parcells at that point. And it was great because he said the agreement that I have with the previous owner, Mr. Hess, I don't know these 2 guys.
I didn't know those 2 guys. And yet Robert Kraft said in the documentary he was about a minute away from hiring Dom Capers to be his next head coach when Belichick managed to maneuver out from under the contract because Parcells called and said, okay, I'll let you do this, but you're going to pay for it with draft pick compensation.
But remember what Mr. Kraft said. He said the league told him that Parcells with the Jets would be great for the NFL. Mr. Kraft said, I feel that the NFL hasn't been on the up and up.
He said it isn't as pure as I first thought. It was a big shot fired, man.
He wasn't just talking about this NFL. This was Commissioner Tacklebu at the time.
He was disillusioned by it.
They're going to be upset with you, Mr. Kraft.
You're
not supposed to let out the
Well, after he remember after he folded his 10 in Deflategate and tried to take one for the league, right? And then when he realized he got busted for a first and a third round pick, but $1 million fine. Then he turned back around and said, "How dare you?" You know?
He said,
I was a fool.
He said, "I knew I shouldn't have trusted."
Okay. So to conclude on Bill Belichick, so he goes to New England, he goes 5-11, and then he goes 0-2, and Drew Bledsoe faithfully gets hurt by Mo Lewis, and out of the heavens falls the 6th round draft pick, and the rest is dynastic history. Well, again, all those, there's no Richard. I mean, you got Richard Seymour and Will Fork, as you talked about. So you don't have any Pro Bowlers except those guys who made 2.
Yeah.
Right. 2
Well, they
multiples.
They made 5. They made at least 5.
Yeah, more than 2.
Right. Correct.
Okay. So you have 2 defensive stars, and the rest are just mixed and matched spare parts. You just mix and match them.
Right.
But you can get away with that when you have a quarterback that if it gets close in the fourth quarter, he's going to pull it out for you.
Well, the Patriots were 5th in scoring defense. The Eagles were 6th. Now, we're talking about the Eagles and how that defense and how they rushed the passer, but they gave up more points than the no-name Patriots. And that's what we see here. We talk about LT's in the Hall of Fame, Harry Carson's in the Hall of Fame, but there's not a whole lot of those other guys that we really know. In the early years of those defenses, I mean, Willie McGinnis went to a few Pro Bowls. Ty Law was one of the top cornerbacks at the time. That was great for them to say, you know what, Kurt Warner, you're not going anywhere. We're going to play 2-man. That's all we're going to play. We're going to make you fit it in, and we're going to jam Marshall Faulk anytime
we are going to get extremely physical with your little wideouts. And we're going to bust them up, and they're not going to like it because they don't get treated like this.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden, it became a game. They hung in there.
There's nothing pure in this world.
No,
you know? The NFL. When I think of the NFL, I really think of
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure, Mr. Kraft, you said them all good things about Coach. You said them good things about Coach Belichick, but he got that side out on you.
Listen,
Yeah, but when I wanted to make that move, that ain't what you did.
it's competition. All is fair in love and war, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see another documentary in the future about Robert Kraft told Bill Belichick to trade Jimmy G.
Yeah.
We'll see. Is Tom Brady the most clutch athlete ever? We'll discuss that next.